Could we all rise for the pledge, please?
Flag. Do we have a flag?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic
which stands
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
to
Please mute yourself unless you have something to say. We'll let that stand in for cell phones. And could we have the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Freiberg,
here.
Mr. Posnell,
Here?
Mr. Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Sanders,
here.
Mr. Scalette,
He's here.
Mrs. Schrader,
Here.
Mr. Sears,
Here.
Mr. Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Tillman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. This will be the first opportunity for public comments. Please place your comments on the public comment form link that's found on the page, the board page. All questions and comments will be addressed to the president. Board and staff members will not respond to comments or questions during the meeting unless recognized by the president for this purpose. Comments will be limited to the 5 minutes or less. And I guess we'll give it a second. Is Vince monitoring the comments?
Yes, I can go ahead and share that for you. We do
Okay.
have one public comment, and that's from Siobhan Tyson. Let me go ahead and share that for you. And then Wendy, are you going to be doing the agenda?
Yes, I did share my screen, but I don't think it's working. Let me just,
Okay. Yeah, we're not seeing it. So
There you
here,
go.
can you?
Yes.
Are you seeing Siobhan's
Yes, we are.
comment?
Yes, we are. And that's nice. Thank you very much.
Stop.
There we go. Yeah, well, it's not sharing.
Now Wendy's sharing.
All right. And you have the link to the minutes of the regular monthly meeting of April 20th. If there are no changes or corrections, I think I'll submit them as they are. Hearing none, I guess we can approve as submitted. Mr. Sears?
Okay, wanted to let you know that the interest for the month of April was $23,210 roughly, which, as you can understand, is way down from what we normally experience in interest. We have nothing in CDs right now, and the interest rates are dropping, as you can imagine. As usual, we have a consent agenda. Would any board member like any of the items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of the items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below mentioned items.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Then this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. The board met in executive session in a virtual meeting format on May 13th, 2020 at 4 p.m. as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act for the purpose of discussing matters of personnel and contract negotiation. No official action was taken. This will be the last meeting of Ms. Geyer as our student board representative. We will recognize her for her service at this time, and Sophia, we'll miss you. Oh, we got a nice little picture of the
plaque.
little plaque.
Miss you guys too.
Okay.
Thank you.
And now we have the fun stuff. We get to recognize the National Merit Scholarship Program students for 2020. We have 2 commended students, Luke A. Hardman, who's the son of Mr. Mark and Mrs. Jennifer Hardman. Rachel M. Ludwig, the daughter of Mr. Craig and Mrs. Catherine Ludwig. Liam Waterbury, the son of Mr. Mather and Mrs. Melinda Waterbury. And Adam C. Weller, the son of Mr. Glenn and Mrs. Melissa Weller. We have 2 finalists. Bevan E. Fogdahl, the daughter of Mr. Todd and Mrs. Elaine Fogdahl. And Augustine J. Ha, the son of Mr. Chulang Ha and Mrs. Yune Ma. And we have 1 National Hispanic Scholar, who is Liam Waterbury, son of Mr. Matthew and Mrs. Melinda Waterbury. Liam scored in the top 2.5% among Hispanic and Latino PSAT and MSQT test takers in their region. Well done, folks.
Yes, yeah.
And tonight we're also pleased to be able to recognize their retirees for the 1920 school year. We're really grateful for all of their years of service to the district and most importantly for their service to our students. Under current circumstances, we would like to have more of a fanfare. However, not being able to do this shouldn't diminish the amount of gratitude we have for your efforts. Tonight we honor Colleen Denon Stanley, Sue Lindsay, Pat Stamford, Kathy Cardello, and Sally Spanswick. And I believe, Wendy, are you going to play a video?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Today, I'm here at the York Suburban Middle School, Yorkshire Elementary School, Valley View Elementary, where school is cool. And here at the York Suburban High School on a very important mission. This year we had 7 retirees from the York Suburban School District and 5 who we haven't had a chance to thank publicly. We want to make sure we celebrate the contributions of Colleen Stanley, Patricia Stanford, Kathy Cardello, Sally Spanswick, and Sue Lindsay for their combined almost 100 years of service to the York Suburban School District. They've spent tremendous amount of time doing things like mopping and cleaning the gym floors here in Valley View, walking these halls in the morning, and lunch duty. But the true memories and the long-lasting impressions were made in Miss Cardello's classroom, where she helped 6th graders transition into middle schoolers. The health room, where Mrs. Stanley cared for our sick youngsters. And the custodial area, where Sue Lindsay worked hard to keep Valley View looking beautiful. Mrs. Stanford's classroom, where science comes alive. And here, where Mrs. Spanswick made the English language a little less foreign. So I ask everyone watching this video today to imagine our 5 retirees on stage with me today for a much-deserved curtain call. The metaphorical performance in which they participated has played out in front of countless students who will never forget their efforts and their experience in our schools, which have made their lives unforgettable. Please join me in standing and applauding the careers of our 2020 York Suburban School District retirees. Colleen, Pat, Kathy, Sue, Sally, we would pack this auditorium if we could, but under the circumstances, we can't. So on behalf of the entire York Suburban School District, please accept our sincere thank you for the tremendous amount of contributions you have given the York Suburban School District. You have inspired a bold future in all of us, and we wish you a bold future in your retirement. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah, that was great.
That was good.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Good.
Next on the agenda is, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Joel Sears as treasurer for 1 year beginning July 20th, 2020, at no
Second.
compensation except for the thrill of doing the job.
And it is a thrill.
Yeah. So second, do we get a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions, comments? And this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. And we have an item that will come up in June. We need to appoint 2 voting members for the PA School Board Association Delegate Assembly in November. The deadline for us is August, so we will do that at the next. So if anybody is interested, please let me know. Having said that, since we are kind of going through a tight budget thing, I would recommend that if you're going to nominate yourself for this, please be willing to put up the funds to travel so that we cannot burden the school district with travel expenses.
John, I'm interested in going, and they're not going to have the whole conference. They've canceled the conference, and I have a strange feeling this may be a virtual type thing
Okay.
because it's past what the usual Friday afternoon deadline is. So I'm very interested in going.
Okay, if anybody else is interested, please let me know before the next voting meeting. And also, since I'm still talking here, one of the things that we have in the budget this year is a sum of money, I believe it's around $2,500 for board member training and travel. And I would like to propose to the board that we remove that this year. You know, there's no point in us keeping money if we're asking everybody else to give up money.
Yeah, John, I can agree with that. I think that's a good idea and the least we can do as a board. I agree with you.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments? All right, thank you. Then I think I'm done. Dr. Williams.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just want to run through some items as part of the superintendent's report before we get to Dr. Snedden's proposal. I want to thank everybody for their hard work in making forward learning work for the rest of the school year. The last student day will be the 28th of May. So people are trying to get it done before then. And we certainly hope that ends well. It's going well so far. And kudos to the parents, students, staff, administration who's made it all work. Everybody came together, worked really hard to make sure that we had a successful forward learning initiative. But as we come to an end here, we're looking at figuring out how to proceed for the upcoming year. The upcoming year could be anything from traditional opening of school to one extreme and to forward learning, continuation of forward learning on the other extreme, or perhaps something somewhere in the middle. So we're watching very carefully what happens with the pandemic to try to figure out how we're going to proceed. We're drafting a lot of creative ideas to try to cope with the circumstances so that we can deliver education for York Suburban students. And as we ponder those things, there are some other things that I'd like to share with you this month. High school graduation, Dr. Ellis has been collaborating with senior leadership and parents to develop plans to celebrate our graduating seniors. He has been in regular communication with seniors and their parents about the various arrangements. This year's graduation ceremony will be held virtually at the originally scheduled date and time of May 27th at 7 p.m. And it may be publicly viewed via the district's website. You may recall that earlier this month was Teacher Appreciation Week. Dr. Ketterman, Dr. Krauser, and Dr. Manos did a wonderful job putting together some video messages that involved the entire administrative staff. And we thanked the staff for their efforts in forward learning. And we also did a message thanking the parents for their cooperation in helping us make this successful. So I want to recognize those folks for their efforts in making that happen. For the upcoming school year, we have some new information from the Pennsylvania Department of Education about the Future Ready PA Index. Now, you may recall that we don't have standardized test scores for PSSA and Keystones this year, so those are key components of the Future Ready PA Index. So the state has decided that they're going to rely on 2018-19 data for a lot of the PA Future Ready Index. There are a couple of areas that will use 19-20 data, but most of it will be 2018-19. And the superintendent's report contains a chart of all those various things and from what years those various data components will come from. The next item is the 2020-21 budget. Mrs. Shuley has been working hard to reduce the $3.3 million deficit we're facing for the budget, which needs to be adopted at the June board meeting. administrative team has reviewed staffing and is proposing some measures on tonight's agenda to help close that deficit. We are recommending the elimination of some vacant positions, some of which are being filled differently with existing staff. These measures, coupled with use of fund balance, are getting us close to an acceptable final budget. While this coming year's budget is going to be challenging, I expect that the second and third years are going to be even more so. We must remain diligent in becoming as fiscally efficient as we possibly can to avoid future staff reductions and/or program cuts. Remember, year one's going to be bad. Years 2 and 3 are going to be worse. Meal distributions. We continue to provide meals to students through the end of the school year, and we're in conversation to figure out if that'll extend into the summertime. Kindergarten registration. Just want to make a reminder to folks that if you have a child who should be registered for kindergarten and has not yet, I want to encourage those people to do get the registration done quickly. I have a link in the superintendent's report to get that done. Our numbers for kindergarten this upcoming year they were down prior to the pandemic, and they're still down during the pandemic. So if anybody needs to register their child for kindergarten, we encourage you to do that as soon as you possibly can. And also at the end of the superintendent's report will be the enrollment report for May. And that concludes the superintendent's report. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Snedden to discuss his proposal for a facility dog.
Do we get some questions?
Sure.
Do you have any specific numbers on kindergarten registration? Last year here was 50 and 36, just out of curiosity.
I think about 38 and 49-ish.
Okay.
Still very much down.
Okay. And do you have the positions, or is Mrs. Chichiliano, the vacant positions that you're eliminating?
You mean the ones that were discussed at the personnel
You're discussing, yeah, the one, yeah.
Yeah, they were discussed at the personnel committee meeting.
Okay.
And nothing has changed since then.
I'd also like to make a comment, especially you're mentioning, Dr. Williams, of the teacher appreciation video and the video that we just saw a few moments ago with Dr. Krauser. I just want to express my gratitude for how impressive they are. All those videos, the ones I watched earlier, very impressive. I mean, here we are in a pandemic and trying to figure out how to convey emotion and how to convey meaning over video. And I'm just very impressed. So I want to convey that. Thank you.
Thank you. They did there are several key people in that, and I mentioned them already, and they've done just a wonderful job in pulling that off. Any other questions, commentary? Okay. Next item is Dr. Snedden's proposal for a facility dog at the middle school. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Snedden.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good evening, board. I'm not sure how I can compete with that retirement video. That was quite impressive. And, you know, I definitely agree, you know, for us to be able to convey true meaning and emotion, I think that got pretty close to accomplishing that for those retirees. As I watched, I scanned over to see their pictures and their facial reactions experiencing that. So that was really special to me. So I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about something I actually started back in the Chambersburg School District prior to transferring, but something that is definitely a passion of mine, and that is to talk about a facility dog. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. I have a short presentation just to go through. You have the full proposal in front of you. So to talk a little bit here, the components I'm going to go through, talk a little bit about my history with involvement in a program like this, outlining what is a facility dog program for a school, and then the benefits for the building, the school community, including both staff and students, and then getting into a little bit of the fine details, but not quite as in depth as what the actual proposal itself does. As you glance through that proposal, you'll notice everything is drafted out the whole way down to who will take the dog out to go to the bathroom, as well as making sure we're picking up any waste that results from that trip outside. So as I mentioned, I did start moving through this process with United Disability Services out of Lancaster, PA. And I started whenever I was at the middle school in Chambersburg, prior to my move to the high school. And as you move through this process for a facility dog, you go through training and then you end up on a wait list. And facility dogs result from service dogs that are unable to complete very specific tasks. A facility dog and a service dog are two completely different things. A service dog is primarily driven for one individual person, and they have a unique set of skills that they are able to perform for that person. Now, should a dog not be able to do that specific skill, or if they have, for instance, one leg is longer than the other leg from their physical exam, they are no longer eligible to be a service dog, and they have to become a facility dog. And these have grown in popularity in hospitals, schools, and different facilities of the similar. And actually, as I waited on this wait list for 2 years, right as I was getting hired for York Suburban, I was actually finally matched with a dog. And so I had explained to them that I was transferring school districts and that I would possibly look at pursuing this further once I was established in the district. That being said, that dog was then able to be matched with another school district in another part of our area. Which brings me to now, here I am, York Suburban School District. As smooth as this transition could be during this time, they have allowed me to put YSMS on their wait list. However, it does require us to have a letter guaranteeing that the district is on board with this type of project moving forward, which is why I had asked Dr. Williams to be able to present to you, as well as put together the proposal for your review. So the presence of a facility dog is really the idea of the calming effect that it puts on a school culture. And so its mere presence within a building really reduces anxiety, fear, and promotes some emotional comfort. That's why in recent years, you've seen them start to be used in medical facilities as well as other schools. And students look forward to seeing that facility dog on a daily basis. For our building, what I would propose is that it's going to assist counselors and staff in dealing with our unique situations of students dealing with anxiety, depression, trauma, which, especially coming out of a global pandemic like this is going to be invaluable for our students to be able to support them in this way. They are able to participate in classroom lessons, and as I mentioned, just provide an overall positive classroom experience and school culture. So as I mentioned, one of the things that is so the benefits of a facility dog is the list here in front of you. And the idea is really to improve the emotional balance for our students. It talks about, reducing anxiety and easing stress of students, especially those students that are maybe experiencing high anxiety, high stress, depression, especially in our counseling department. Through my short time here in Suburban, I am amazed at the work that our counselors are doing on a daily basis, their interactions. And as I pitched this idea to them, they instantly became very, very excited at the positive impact this could have on their interacting with a student. Especially within the counseling realm, oftentimes what you have happen is a student may not be willing to speak with an adult about what it is that is upsetting them, stressing them, causing the anxiety. Introduction of a facility dog of this nature, what you have is then that level of comfort. And as they're petting the dog, they're willing to speak and engage in some of that social behavior. As well as, that final point there, which is one of the unique things that evolves out of the research, is that, students are more able to and more comfortable to engage in a non-judgmental atmosphere with a facility dog. The number one thing is students with reading difficulties. What they find is that if they are reading to the dog, they exhibit, because they consider that a non-judgmental atmosphere as opposed to reading in front of peers. And so they're able to work on those skills. And that is really important to our students that are struggling learners. So us moving forward as York Suburban into this process, there are two main components. The first would be the letter of intent from the district. And this is just saying that the York Suburban School District is supportive of our proposal moving forward. This would then continue us to remain on the wait list and potentially to be matched with a dog. Now, I mentioned being matched with a dog. It's a little like dating, if you will. They actually will bring the dog to the facility, meet all of the handlers, get a feel for the building, as well as the number of students that are in our building, the unique characteristics of our students, to make sure that it is an appropriate match for the facility. One of the components that's more clearly outlined in the proposal is that we have ongoing training that has to occur every year, as well as passing a skills test. When I went to UDS to watch the training of the animals, I was blown away that these dogs are come to us, 3 to 5 years old, and they are trained with over 60 commands that they are able to perform based on the verbal cue of the handler. And I was absolutely blown away. I mean, and that could be because my two dogs, we struggle a little bit with the training that, I'm definitely impressed at their ability. So we have to keep that training up and make sure that they continue to meet those benchmarks to continue to be certified by UDS. That's one of the advantages to having an organization like UDS be overarching. They provide the liability insurance as long as that dog continues to meet those benchmarks in that training. So that's an advantage. And really, in recent years, anybody is able to go on Amazon and buy a vest for an animal and say that it is a service animal. These animals from UDS come with vests, with a badge, and a certificate identifying them as such. The overall cost of the animal, that is a $3,500 donation to that nonprofit, United Disability Services. And that is for the cost of the animal and the training. Now, they are very sure to cite that the actual cost of this is far above that, but they do work as a nonprofit, which is that price that they provide to the organization seeking a facility dog. And in working with Dr. Krauser, as well as the business office, it would be my plan to be able to pay for that out of our general supplies for the building. The ongoing costs, such as veterinary care, food, grooming, etc., since I would be the owner handler of the animal for the building, that would all fall on to me, that I would cover all of those costs for the animal. I did note there that other districts, to build the dog into the culture, sometimes different clubs and organizations, sometimes they will do various sponsorships just to have that stake in the game, if you will, that they feel part of a project of this magnitude. So I listed here, as I mentioned, and especially in the proposal, it's more clearly articulated. These are the people that I have spoken to thus far concerning being on our facility dog team. Everyone here is picked for a very specific reason based on their role in the building, that they would be that first group to be trained as handlers. The dog is only able to be with a trained handler. So nobody else in the building would be able to use the facility dog without one of these individuals present. If you notice, although I'm the owner handler, knowing that my role is to focus on the needs of the building, the dog will spend very little time with me and more time with these individuals that are listed as handlers. So as I mentioned, all of us would be trained by United Disability Services in their Lancaster location. As you can imagine, with the pandemic, they have put all of that training on hold, as well as any type of matching. And as I mentioned, the annual test that must be met. So they must pass the annual skills test, as well as a health and wellness of the animal. They go so far as to that you only have a 3 pound plus or minus from the animal for it to meet that benchmark. So it is kept to a very strict physical regiment, as well as eating process for them. So one of your questions probably comes up is, okay, where is this being used currently? So looking in our general area, here are the various school districts that have facility dogs. One that I would highlight and that I'm probably most familiar with, if the Warwick School District, if you paid at all any attention to Warwick, they did have the unfortunate events of some suicides within the district, as well as a vehicle accident, which did cause a lot of trauma for the student population. And they actually implemented through their foundation dogs in all of their buildings. So that entire district has a dog in all of their buildings. And Penn Manor is very close to having one in all of their buildings as well. So although we would not be the first, and that's one of the things I love about my time here at Suburban, is this idea of making bold moves and being bold in our thinking and changing how we're doing education for students. You would see Northern New York does have one, but I definitely feel that this would be a positive for our students, especially at the middle school level. As students transition, they are experiencing a lot more social emotional needs than perhaps some of our other students. So that's the end of my my informal presentation here that I have for you. As I mentioned, the proposal does have more information outlined in it, and gets very, very specific. So I welcome any questions that you might have, or if you need to digest that a little bit, I'm sure you can get in contact with me as well.
Thank you. Any questions? None? I just have one. I believe this would carry a lot more weight if you got sponsors either through, clubs and organizations or community. I think rather than just getting the dog, I think that would be really, really useful. That's my only observation.
Yeah, I honestly, I 100% agree with you. And that's one of the detriments to arriving right as the pandemic hits and everyone exits the building.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get to make all of those same connections. But I agree. I mean, if you talk to any of those other districts that were listed, that communal buy-in is one of those pieces that really promote the success of a program like this. Fortunately, anytime people see a dog, most people see a dog, they are very excited about that. So I think it'd be very easy to get some clubs and activities on board.
I think this sounds, especially the $3,500, like a great YSF grant. So I don't know if you've connected with that organization or not, but that would be, I think, an ideal thing to apply for.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I haven't yet, but thank you.
I have a question. I'm just, as a matter of interest, what in your research you found in terms of dealing with student allergies? What's been your experience or the experience of those you're aware of, if it's an issue, student allergies are an issue or not?
Sure, and actually that's one of two main things that typically come up with a program like this. The first one's allergies, and then the second one is any type of fear of animals. As you examine the proposal, you'll notice that's denoted in there that when we collect information on students, that would be a change that we have to make, is that we have to inquire about that very specific information. So we're inquiring about whether there are severe allergies as well as any type of fear of an animal. And then what happens is those rooms where that student may be located become no dog areas. So the dog is no longer able to go into those areas for that purpose.
Okay, thank you, thanks.
Sure.
Other? Thank you.
I'd like to second James's suggestion about the YSF grant. It seems like the perfect organization to approach,
Right.
And I'd also like to just offer my support. I think it's a terrific idea.
Okay. Others?
Well, thank you, Dr. Snedden. And if you have board members, if you have more questions, we can get them to Dr. Sned and he can get responses. This is informational this month for action next month. So you have some time to contemplate the issue. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chuli.
I have several items for board consideration. The first one is the Glatfelter agency is where we get our errors and commission liability insurance. And we're recommending that they continue to be the broker of record for 2021.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The second item is an annual board vote for the depositories. We have two, ACNB Bank, and then the Pennsylvania School Liquid District Liquid Asset Fund, PISLOF. And those two are also recommended for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? This can also be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is a recommendation for the establishment of the Puzzles Partner student activities. This is to support the autistic support classrooms. And we're looking to start this for fundraising so that students can do activities outside of normal instruction.
So moved.
Second. Questions or comments? This can also be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is the renewal agreement with Substitute Teacher Services. There is no increase to the markup of 32%, and the contract is effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2022.
A motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? How does that work if we are not in session, but we're teaching remotely? Do the substitutes have to learn our system?
We don't employ substitutes when we have a regular, when a classroom teacher is out during forward learning.
Okay. Okay. Then this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is also an annual renewal. This is for the independent contract for billing bilingual, effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And it is for English to Spanish document translation. The hourly rate is $65. No change from the current contract.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
How much do we actually use that service?
I will have to ask the Director of Pupil Services and get back to the board.
Other questions? Then I think this can also be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is giving authorization to the Director of Finance and Operations to prepare the year-end budget transfers and journal entries in preparation for the annual audit, as well as make those final adjustments after the audit has been completed, as well as assign any fund balances to make sure that we stay within the legal limits.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Questions or comments? This can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is approval for the budgetary reserve of $500,000. This is for expenses that we do not anticipate for the 2021 budget year. Typically, this has been included in the budget throughout the budget process. When I arrived, we removed this item, and if you recall, I said that I would ask the board to add it back in. This is typically used for emergencies. Some examples of that would be if our kindergarten classes are high and we are in need of an additional teacher, we'll use the funds to support the salary and benefits out of budgetary reserve. Many times we'll have facility emergencies and we would deduct the budgetary reserve to cover the expenses. Other times there have been increases, at least in my experience, in cyber charter school enrollments, and so those increases would come in over budget, and so we would cover those expenses through budgetary reserve.
Okay.
So moved.
Second. Questions or comments? This can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The informational section, the board had asked at the last board meeting how many students we have using the WellSpan physical services. And I did go back and ask, and we have about 65 students who have used the service. In addition to the physicals, WellSpan will also write our standing orders, and they approve and review any of our health-related protocols and procedures. Any questions on that? Okay. As a continuation of the can you see my screen?
No.
Okay.
There we go.
Now
Okay. As a continuation of the Property and Finance Committee meeting last week, we put together some different tax scenarios for the board's consideration. The one on your far right is the budget at a 0% increase and the deficit of 1.9 million. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that if we use fund balance from the pension reserve of 300,000 and any carryover, and I say any carryover because this is an estimate of 1.5, then our deficit is still 188,000. I've provided this handout as a reference for the board to consider. I've added what the scenarios would be if it was at a 1%, 1.5, and a 2%. When you get down to the bottom after the use of fund balance, if you see this as a positive, that would mean that we would use less fund balance. So instead of that 1.5, it would go down by 221,000. So whenever there's a positive, you'll use less fund balance. If there's a negative, we'll use more fund balance. As of today, I have done my projections again, and will continue to do so until we get, as we close the budget. And my estimates have dropped from 1.5 to 1.3. And so we'll continue to monitor that and update the board. But we're still anticipating that we'll have some savings and a carryover for next year's budget. And so I'll just leave the time open for any board discussion on any of these increases, any continued conversation that you would like to have.
Thoughts, comments?
Joel and John, you were both pushing for the 0% increase. Is that my recollection, or you were?
That's correct, Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm having a little bit of a struggle with that. I know that next year is going to be bad and years 2 and 3 are looking to be even worse, but I'm not ready to make a final decision on this. I'd like to see if there's any more, any other considerations given, but
Kathy,
I'm with you, Ellen.
what are the increases in our labor costs, assuming here?
Increases in labor?
Teachers, administrators?
We have not made any changes to any of the salaries. So everything is going forward, assuming that contracts are honored.
So what does that mean?
Meaning we've budgeted exactly what the contract has said.
Which is
2% for faculty, and I forget exactly for administrators or Act 93.
Administrators are on a merit increase, and so we've budgeted up to a 3%. For teachers, their salary and step is overall 2%. That does not include the column movements. And for support staff, we've budgeted 2.25%.
Okay, so if everybody stayed flat year over year, what does that result in if we have a 0% tax increase?
I don't have that information readily available, but I can get that to you.
Okay. And I'd like to I don't know when our next personnel meeting is. Is that Wednesday?
Yes.
Can we have it by then so it can be in public forum, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Kathy, what's the so there's a difference in the collection of $250,000 without a change in the millage. So I'm assuming the value of the real estate is lower?
No, we decreased the collection rate from 97 to 96. And so that's just a difference between the current year revenues and.
All right, so the 1920 budgets are at 97%.
Yes.
Not 96. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that was just looking at where we are.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. That concludes the business office report.
Okay. Ms. Geyer, one more time.
Hello. I would just like to start off by saying thank you.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, she must be.
We lost you. You're muted, I think.
Oh, can
There you
hear
go.
me now?
Now you're good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that thank you so much for giving me the opportunity of providing you with reports all year. It's been a pleasure, and I just wanted to say that I think I can speak for myself and others that we're very thankful and lucky to be a part of a district with a board that puts in countless hours of support and effort for the students and parents of the district. So thank you so much. I would just like to start off my report by congratulating all the dedicated and hardworking seniors who were recognized for awards and scholarships on the YSHS Awards Night. And Impact Foundation has been doing the same thing of last month by just supporting people in the community who may be struggling, and just included a little free library in front of the Valley View Elementary School so students can access books anytime. And currently the club Project Greenhouse is in the making for next year. It's a greenhouse to help with the biocurriculum, and they're currently fundraising for it digitally. And they're trying to reach their goal of $1,000 this year to build the structure, and also the rest of the money will go towards supplies and plants. And it's a very short report with everything going on. So, but I would like to say thank you so much for this year, and I'd also like to welcome Carly Bowen, who will be your next year's school board representative. So, welcome, Carly.
Would you like to say anything, Ms. Bowen?
This is my first time, and all that has been said so far is really interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to again working with all of you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Was that the end of your report? Okay. All right. Committee reports. You have the committee meeting schedule posted. And academic standards and curriculum committee report, Mr. Scalette.
People pay attention.
Thank you. The committee recommends board approval of the proposal for adoption of a new 6th to 8th grade English language arts textbook and electronic equivalents for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Questions or comments? None? Okay, then I guess this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
The recommendation for the board to approve the contract to purchase 6th to 8th grade English language arts textbook and electronic equivalents for the 2020-2021 school year from McGraw-Hill in the amount of $96,705.67. A motion?
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Ellen.
Oh, okay,
Second.
thank you. All right. Questions or comments?
Just for my edification, these are annual contracting expenses, or we buy it now and we can use it for a few years and then, okay, thank you. How long does the contract run?
It's a 6-year contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments? I think this can also be a unanimous roll call vote.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my report.
Did we have the unanimous roll call vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Kathy. For the record, you want to do it again?
Sure. This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. I don't know if I had dropped out or we missed it.
Everybody fell asleep all at once.
Personnel Committee, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. The February 19th minutes are provided. Before you have the consent agenda. You have before you the personnel report, which includes resignation. We dropped that a little bit, Vince. I don't have that preamble memorized yet.
I'm sorry, Wendy.
Okay.
Wendy there you
That's
go.
fine, right there. Wendy, Vince, whoever. Thank you. You saved my life. You have before you the personnel report, which includes resignation, employment positions, and leave of absence. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below mentioned items.
Do Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? And this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Property and Finance, Mr. Sears.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Yeah, the minutes of the April 8th meeting are provided. They are available in hard copy at the business office, and they're linked to the online agenda tonight. Property and Finance met on May 13th at 5 o'clock via Zoom. Barry gave us updates on the 4 summer projects, which were the high school stair treads, East York and Indian Rock flooring, high school gym floor, and the high school pool filter. All are expected to be finished on time and on budget. Mr. Sanders asked about the potential cost increases, if any, that might be related to personal protection equipment. Barry reported that there would be no such additional costs. Kathy's business report talked about the projected impacts of COVID on state and local revenue and the tax collection rate, which we've talked about a couple times in committee and in the planning sessions. Kathy provided an updated budget projection using 0% tax increase, as we had discussed earlier this evening. The takeaway, again, is that the 2021 school year will be bad, and the 21-22 and 22-23 school years will be worse. Our budget had a structural deficit before COVID. It just makes it worse. The committee leaned in the direction of the 0% tax increase, but it was not a unanimous leaning. The meeting was adjourned at 6:10. Our next meeting is June 10th at 5 p.m., presumably by Zoom again. That's my report.
Okay. Are you doing the recommendation for the financial?
The recommendation for
the PFM financial advisors?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That's on the agenda. Be with me. All right. Property and Finance Committee recommends the board appoint PFM Financial Advisors, LLC, to serve as the district's independent municipal advisor.
You have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I have a question for Brooke Say. I believe she's here. Is there any legal reason we have to do this?
Typically, it's done every year or close to the time in which you believe you might have a bond financing. It's not atypical to see it on there. You could either do it now or you could do it closer to the time that you might actually utilize the service. But I believe this contract, if I remember from last meeting, has some ongoing services provided. Kathy, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, so I would typically use PFM for items outside of bond issuances, particularly if we were looking at capital projects, or even through this COVID-19, I would ask them what the market would look like and bounce ideas off of them. So this gives me the opportunity to use them in between bond issuances as well. And we would only be charged if we were doing a bond issuance. So everything else that I would use PFM for would not be a fee for service.
My question is there a legal reason that we have to do this? I'm just asking because we've asked advice from a lot of people over the years that I've been on the board, and I don't recall us going through this procedure.
I think, as I said last time we met, the question was whether you have to approve contracts, and this is a contract over $100. So typically that is something that's within the board's purview, and the school code require it. So if you intend to engage them in an ongoing service for which they will bill you for fee, then a contract would be the way to do that, and the board should approve it.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm not making that clear, just ask me.
Yeah, I sort of kind of get that. I'm not, 100% sure. So we're just doing this to have it in place if we decide to use their services and it costs more than $100. Is that correct? I don't recall us doing that when we've asked other people for advice and
This
Just
This
curious.
is a little bit different relationship, Ellen. We really do expect to use these people.
And I would also consider it a best practice.
Fiduciary response relationship, not an underwriting relationship. So they're, I mean, I think maybe I'm oversimplifying, but they're going to sit between us and the underwriter at some point to help guide our decisions and not necessarily lock us into a bond issue. There are some other alternatives that companies like RBC really can't make available to us.
Just curious. This is something I have not faced in 22 years on the board. I was just kind of curious. That was all.
And
Thank
just
you.
to be clear, the board can go with whomever they want for underwriting services. I don't think this contract binds you to anything. It just allows you to use them for advice as Kathy needs as she proceeds with budgetary issues.
Okay, thank you, Brooke.
Kathy, since there were questions, let's do a roll call vote on this.
Sure. Mr. Tillman,
Yes.
Mrs. Schrader,
Yes.
Mr. Posnell,
Yes?
Mr. Sears,
Yes.
Mr. Scalette,
Yes.
Mrs. Fryrick,
Yes. Without.
Mr. Sanders,
Yep.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Legislative update, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. The hot action in legislative update land is writing to our good friends in the legislature about the proposed tax freeze to be imposed by Harrisburg. We've contacted all of our representatives, heard directly from Senator Dave Arnold, who has some moral, ethical, and legislative reservations about such a freeze. But that's as far as he would go. Also wrote to all of our friends, forwarding a copy of Dr. Williams' editorial, and heard back from the office of Senator Kristen Phillips Hill to inform me that I do not live in her senatorial district. At which point I replied, and I apologize for the confusion, that I was not writing as a constituent, but as the legislative liaison for the York Suburban School District. Today, we have not heard back.
Yeah.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Can I just ask you, Rich, do you think this is gaining traction up in Harrisburg?
Yes, I do. They keep coming back. It's almost like a punching bag dummy that we used to have when we were kids, you know, the kind that had weight in the bottom. I mean, it gets tabled and then it just keeps coming back. So I think they're going to push for it. On the other hand, I think it's also an opportunity for us to counterattack too and point out some of the anomalies and structural deficits that are built into our budget. And the reason I say that is I don't think a representative such as Senator Arnold, who is new to his office, is fully cognizant of these questions, and we should press that.
I just get the feeling that they're going to play games and try and, you know, it's a game of chicken. They're going to try and convince all of the districts that we should freeze it, and then they'll say, oh, well, we don't have to pass this. The districts already did it, you know, because isn't that one, you know, we're great. We convinced them to do it and we don't really need the legislation. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like a game of cat and mouse. Okay.
Well, it always is, isn't it, Ellen?
Yeah, and this one's a little more draconian, maybe.
Well, maybe this time we can be less of the mouse and more of the cat.
I would love that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
LIU, Ms. Frye.
Okay, you have before you the Dawn's Early Light highlights of the from the LIU board meeting of May 5th. Always kind of interesting reading. And I've heard nothing specific from Sue Heaston, who is president of that board and also represents us through Dallastown also. The LIU Joint Operating Authority, we have a meeting tomorrow evening. We missed one at the beginning of all of this pandemic era, and we will see what is going on over there. I don't think that there are going to be any major projects or anything being done over at the Learning Center, but we will see, and we will see what the budget is, which will tell us how much each district is going to be contributing to the LIU for the York Learning Center. Are there any questions? Okay, more interesting perhaps is the York Adams Academy report. We now have 25 students qualified to graduate, which is pretty good given the circumstances of not being in school since March 13th. Since then, we have had 8 of the 25 people qualified to graduate. We have enrolled 7 students who had previously taken their entrance exam and passed it, and we have been able to do that all online. And we had the other day the first person to actually take the entrance exam online. So we're getting there. We have the potential for another 6 to 8 people who might be qualified for graduation by May 28th, which is the cutoff date. And we will see that each of our graduates gets their diploma duly signed, their cap and gown, and we're going to ask them to come back to our graduation in December if they choose to, so that they too can walk and get their pictures and have all the fun and excitement with their families. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. York Adams Tax Bureau,
No report.
York County School of Technology.
Yes, I would like to share that the School of Technology has been working diligently to get remote learning up and running. They, just so you know, they issued more than 500 laptops to their students to facilitate the remote learning that was required. They've also been working on graduation planning. COVID-19 have caused some issues, but they're working through them. Just to let you know that the construction of the gymnasium has been delayed slightly due to the shutdown brought about by the pandemic, and because it's been so wet. They're looking at a tentative completion date now, estimating early December. Encourage all of you to take a minute and read the mini board report that has been emailed to you, and let me know if there would be any questions. If not, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you.
John, if I might be allowed one more word, I'm sorry. Under York Adams Academy, I know that there was a letter addressed to Dr. Williams from one of the more recent York suburban graduates from York Adams Academy named Dawson Wood. It was a really nice letter. If Dr. Williams, if you could perhaps have that ready to share with the board next month, I think it might give them some insight into what kind of goes through some of the minds of some of our students and graduates. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone that joined us online tonight and sat through with us. We have a link to the board meeting schedule. And Vince, do we have any more public comment?
We do have one additional comment. This one is from Steve, whoops.
Oh, Steve Whiteley, okay.
From Steve Whiteley.
Yeah.
Oh, she has it. Individual.
No, you're there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not able to see it. I don't
see anything.
Move
Scroll
over
up.
where
Wendy.
Scroll
Wendy,
it down.
just scroll down, Wendy.
Yeah.
They're
There you
both
go.
there. The second
There.
one, like to mention, is from Steve.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Do we have anything else for the board? If not, I think we can be adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.